Hi, I'm Dave of Urban Astro, and in this video we're going to continue our Mastering Nina series, and I'm going to be going over the Sky Atlas and the Framing Wizard. This is going to be a long video, just to let you know. I've recorded it several times thus far, and it's in the 30-minute range, but here we go. So the Sky Atlas and the Framing Wizard are really over here in the main menu section over here. You see the Sky Atlas is the second item. It's right underneath equipment, and so we're going to click on Sky Atlas. Now, what exactly is the Sky Atlas? The Sky Atlas is really a search engine. It's a way for you to go in and to search for objects that you may want to set up an imaging session for. And so when you go into the Sky Atlas, it basically has three different sections. The first section here is your search window, and there's a number of different search criteria here, and we'll go through those in just a minute. But this is where you set up your search. Down below here is based upon the date that you have selected up here, it's going to give you observational information. For instance, like the moon phase and what percent is illuminated, and when the moon rises and when the moon sets, and when is astronomical dusk and when is astronomical dawn, and when does the sun rise. So that way you can get a sense as to what your imaging window may look like on this particular day with the moon at that particular illumination. So that's what this section down here presents to you. And then over here, of course, we have the search results. This is where all the search results will pop up at, is in this big main window right over here. So the first thing that you can do, if you know what object you're going to be shooting, so like let's say that I'm going to shoot tonight, I don't know, M13. I can type in M13 and just hit my enter key or hit the search, and M13 will pop up right over here at the Great Hercules Cluster. There's also another object. It looks like it's an open cluster called Bacum 13. Its max altitude is 21 degrees. I can't see it, so, but anyways, here's the Great Hercules Cluster. That's in the constellation Hercules, of course, and we get different things here that we can take a look at. Okay, right here is the names that it can be found under. Here's some details about the object. This is an altitude chart, so we can see how high up it's going to get and what part of our observation window the object will be in the sky. And then some buttons here for certain actions that we can execute on this particular object. Now, in the details tab here, this section right here, we get a lot of different kind of pieces of information that's available to us. One is its coordinates, so its RA coordinates and its declination coordinates. We get the type here. This is a globular cluster, and you eventually will learn these different little abbreviations, if you will, for different things like galaxies and dark nebulas and stuff like that. But you can quickly glance here and say, okay, GLOW CL, so it's a globular cluster. It's in the constellation of Hercules. Here's its apparent size. So its apparent size is going to be 23.2 minutes. Here's its surface brightness, which is going to be 12. And here is its apparent magnitude, which is 5.8. And this right here tells me that it's going to be 62 degrees separated from the moon by 62 degrees when the object does rise. So that's what the information within here tells you. Okay, so what if we don't know and we just want to search for objects. Well, we can go ahead here into observation, and we can pick any night that we want. In this particular case, I'll just stick with June 18th. That's the default here, and you see down here that the moon will be basically 89% illuminated. So if I change this date, just to show you, if I change it to the 22nd, you see that the moon now changes to essentially 99%. So basically on the 22nd through the 23rd is the full moon. And you can see, because I clicked on that, it's now bringing up everything that's possible. We'll just ignore that. So here's a date. So let's go back to the 18th. We'll go back to the 18th. And altitude, here is where you can pick how far up do you want the object to be. What, at what altitude do you want to be able to see it? How high in the sky does this thing get is another way of basically saying this. So for me, I can't see anything that's below 30 degrees, especially to the south and to the east, because I have objects, walls, and neighbor's house that kind of prevents that for me. So for me, it has to be at least 30 degrees for me to even make it worth my while. And it needs to be visible for at least 4 hours. Again, I don't have much of an observation window here. As you can see, I go from basically about 9:30 until about 3:30 in the morning. It's not much time. I figure if it's visible for at least 4 hours, I get something. I could make this 5 hours if I so chose. So let's make it 5 hours just for grins and giggles, as we say. Then the next object, the next thing that I can search on is apparent size, like how big or how small do I want this object to be. I've got the 405 millimeter telescope, so the object can't be 1 arc second or 5 arc second. I'm just not going to see it. So let me say that I'll go from 10 arc, I'll go from, let's say, 30 arc seconds to about 5 degrees. That should cover most objects that I'll be able to see through the 405. The moon, how far away do I want the moon to be from my object? What's the minimum distance? Because we are at 89%. I'm rounding that up. I know it's 88.96, but I'm rounding that thing up to 89. So I'm going to say I want it to be at least 45 degrees separation between my object and the moon. And then in here I can select my object type. What do I want to observe? And there's all kinds of possibilities here. So I'm going to click on a supernova remnant, globular cluster, or a galaxy cluster, a cluster with nebulosity, and a bright nebula. Bright nebula is both reflection and emission nebulas would be covered there. Because I'm in the northern hemisphere, I don't get the large Magellanic Cloud, neither do I get the small Magellanic Cloud, and so these things are not possible for me to photograph in my sky, but that's okay. If I know what constellation I want to shoot in, or I want to search in, I can sit here and I can pick what constellation that I want to be able to shoot in. So for instance, if I want to shoot in the constellation of Andromeda, I can select it. Or if I want to shoot in the constellation of Capricorn, or Ophiuchus is up right now, so I could say I want to shoot in Ophiuchus. You can pick and just search to see what's in a particular constellation if you so want. Coordinates, if you know the area of the sky that you want to take a look at, you don't have to know the precise coordinates, you just have to know generally kind of where in the sky. And you can see here for both the from and through, here's your here's your right ascension, and you get to pick, I want to search from here to here, and then it has the same drop downs, And then here's your declination values. You can pick, again, from, through, in your declination, and it will search that area of sky that you have specified right there. And then here's surface brightness. Again, how bright is the object? For me, because I live in light polluted skies, anything that's like a 2, a 3, or 4, or even a 5 are really hard for me to photograph. I really need a surface brightness of 6 or above for me to really have a fighting chance in my border light skies. But you can set how bright the object is up through the brightest possibility, in this case surface brightness of 18. And then you get a paramagnitude. So here is your magnitude of your object, and again it's the same kind of thing. You can go from a 1, which I'm not going to see really much of a magnitude 1. I'm going to want something a little bit higher than that, but there you go. You got from and through for paramagnitude, and then we can order our search results by size if we want, or by constellation, or by surface brightness, or by object type. I'm going to click on object type, and it'll be descending, and we can do 50 items per page. So let me go ahead and close some of these things up that I'm not going to be searching on. Boom, there we go. I kind of keep the things I am searching on right there so I can see what I searched on, and then I'm going to hit the search button. And in about 15 seconds here, it's going to load up the results. And of course, it's going to go by object type. So here we go. So here's a supernova remnant. Here's another supernova remnant, which is the Veil Nebula. Supernova remnant, SN-REM. So these are all supernova remnants. See, do we have any other objects in here? A lot of supernova remnants. What else do we have? A lot of supernova remnants. I got 17 pages of results. So now we're on page 2 of 17, and we're still going through supernova, can't talk tonight, supernova remnants. There we go. Come on. Oh, we finally got a galaxy. There we go, galaxies. So anyways, you can see how this thing here is set up. So let me go back to page 1. Here we go, page 1. And let's go to my favorite, the Veil Nebula. So here we are. It's a supernova remnant. It's in the constellation Cygnus. Here is its coordinates, its RA and declination. It's going to be 94 degrees away from the moon. It's 3.5 degrees in apparent size. Surface brightness is 99.9. And then its magnitude is going to be 7. So here we are right now, and at dusk, this is astronomical dusk, astronomical twilight, darkness, and so forth. Here's the dawn sequence right there. This thing's going to be up as high as 87 degrees, so it's not a problem. So that's my altitude chart, so I can see I can easily shoot this thing for a good part of the night. Again, I try to wait till about 30 degrees, so probably at about 10:30 I can start shooting this thing all the way until astronomical dawn. So I can either, if I have a sequence already loaded up in my advanced sequencer, I can just say add this target to the sequence, and it will just automatically add the target there. Or I can say set for framing assistant, and it will automatically boot us into the framing assistant, which is coming up next. Or I can hit slew, and it will just slew my telescope to where the target is, And if I want to, I can go into my imaging tab and take a image and take a look at it and see if it's something that I want to set an imaging session up for. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit set for framing assistant, and voila, we're here now in the framing assistant, and you see right now it's searching. It's basically going out to the hips 2 fits sky survey to pull down a 7-degree field of view of that particular image, and there we are. Pretty cool. Now, for the image source, let's focus on this side here for just a minute. On the image source here, you get a wide variety of selections. You can choose the NASA Sky Survey, or the Sky Server Sky Survey, or STSCL, or the ESO, the European Space Sky Survey, the HIPS 2 fits, offline sky map. I have an offline sky map set up so that if I'm at a remote location, I will change this to offline sky map. Just so that you're aware, whatever you set here also impacts what you see in the Sky Atlas. It's kind of interesting. If you set offline sky map here, then when you go into the Sky Atlas next, it will use the offline sky map, and it will use that for your pictures, if you will, of your objects in that search results list. So we'll just stick with the HIPS 2 fits sky survey. I can choose to cache whenever I use this, and I can save this as an image in my image cache. But because I have the offline sky map already loaded up, I don't need to do that. But if you don't have the offline sky map loaded and set up in Nina, then you can definitely cache these things so that if you're at a remote site and you want to call that object back up, you'll have a cached image to do so. So that's this particular part of this right here. And then coordinates. So it's basically, it's calling it a filamentary nebula. I'm going to rename this to Veil, if I could spell. Just going to call it the Veil Nebula, and it gives me its coordinates. Here's its deck and its RA, and here's the field of view. We can change this field of view. Right now this field of view is 7 degrees, so we could make it more by going to like maybe 9 to give us a little bit more breathing room so we can see what's going on here. And we'll give it just a minute here for it to expand this. There we go. And yeah, so here we go. Here's nice. And what's nice is we can move this around. Now, what exactly is this? This is the sensor, what you actually would capture during your imaging session. And it figures that out because in your equipment tab and in your options, you filled in the equipment tab what your camera was. And so it read your camera, and it knows what the width is in pixels and the height in pixels, and knows how large those pixels are. And in the options here, you set up your telescope, and you said that the focal length of my telescope, actually it's in the equipment tab too underneath telescope, you put in 405 millimeters. And so it knows, based on your profile, the camera and the telescope, and it's able to size the sensor to the object as you see here. Now, here, of course, we can increase the size or decrease the size. We can zoom in or zoom out. So we can zoom in and zoom out. We're still looking at the 9-degree field of view, but we can zoom into it if we so wish. And we can zoom out. We can see the whole 9 degrees. Here's a 1-to-1. Let's go back to there. So you got different ways in which you can play with how you view this. The other options you got are all over here. So for instance, changing the opacity of your sensor. Some people like to see how much the sensor covers, and to do that they like to change the opacity of that sensor area. So they can say, okay, yeah, that will work. Different people work differently, so they do provide that. This right here is interesting. When this is enabled, the background will rotate and not the sensor, which is really kind of interesting. So we got the background here, so now the sensor goes to perfectly level. And if we go over here, again, we haven't talked about the targets yet, but if you come down here to targets to rotation, you can rotate this thing by rotating the image and not the sensor. I generally like to rotate the sensor and not the image. That's just the way that I work, so I keep this thing turned off so that way I can rotate my sensor, as you can see there, for framing purposes. So that's what this up here does. This right here displays the constellation boundaries. I don't find that to be a helpful piece of information, but you may. This one here displays and annotate constellations. Again, this shows you what stars are used in that constellation. I don't find that to be necessarily helpful, but you might. This is for the grid lines. You see these grid lines, these blue grid lines, these degrees lines here. You can make them go away if you so wish. Makes it a little cleaner. And then you can get rid of all this stuff here. If you want to see just the object and not the names and the area of the object, like here, this is LDN 846, I think it is, and here's SH103, and you got all these different objects here with showing you what the boundaries of those objects are. You can turn all that off just by doing that. And that really helps in terms of framing, because you don't have all that other stuff that you're dealing with trying to figure out the framing, looking at all that additional stuff. And then this right here just basically allows you to use what's in the image cache if you so wish. Again, if you have the offline map here set up, then that basically has not much use, at least that's my basic thought. Okay, so here we are. So we can move my sensor all around, and we can frame this thing up, and we can even, here in the targets, we can even create mosaics. So for instance, I want to make a 2-panel mosaic, so I'm going to add an additional vertical panel, and there we are. And now I'm just going to move this and position it the way that I want. And there we go. And this is really the delight of the framing wizard, is you get to move this thing around and frame up the object the way that you want. Now, you may be wondering, okay, this is what the framing looks like in Nina, but what is my camera actually framing? And that's where we can come down here, because that's a really great question. You see here, determine rotation from camera. Now I don't have my camera plugged in, so I can't actually go through the process. But if I was outside and it was dark, and I had wanting to know what orientation my camera was, what the framing is, because I have a rotator, I can click determine rotation from camera, and what it will do is it will take an image and it will plate solve, and through the plate solving it will figure out what the degree of rotation my camera is at, and it will adjust and change this framing so that it matches what my camera is actually set to. So that's a really nice feature, and then that kind of helps you understand, okay, I'm there now, so let me go ahead and change the rotation So you can change the rotation accordingly, so that way, based off of what your camera rotation is, you can say, okay, I need to adjust this and I need to have it go to this angle. And then if you're doing a really large mosaic, like a 8 or 16 panel mosaic, you may want to preserve alignment. On a 2 panel, it's not going to be that significant of a difference, but the sky has curvature to it, because again, we're basically moving across the sky in a curving kind of fashion. And so the angles, as you're doing the different panels, are going to be slightly different for each panel in order to keep it, in order to take that particular panel. You can preserve the alignment here, and what this will do is it'll create a one large rectangular panel, but it will change the angles accordingly in order to preserve that rectangular panel. Otherwise, when you get a really large panel, like let's make this thing, I'll show you. Let's make this thing 16 degrees view. It's probably easier said than done to just show you what I'm talking about. So let's say you're going to do like a 15 panel. You can see here that there's the actual panel is actually not going to, it's not going to be this white outline. It's going to be similar to the white outline. Let me get rid of all this stuff so you can see. But you can see right here is panel number 1. It actually comes out past that outline, and it actually comes up and it goes slightly in from that outline, and then it comes up above that outline. So the panels themselves are twisted because of the curvature of the night sky that you're imaging. And so if you want to preserve the alignment, you can click this to on, and you'll notice that these all straightened up, these panel lines. Did you notice that? I don't know if you can see this on YouTube or not, but there you see the curvature. You can see that curvature right there. And then when I click preserve on, it straightens them all out. But what it does, if you notice here, the rotational angle changes just ever so slightly, so that way it can ensure that you get a mosaic at the end of the day that really is that white area, and not, pieces above and beyond and slightly in, and pieces that show the curvature, if you will, of your imaging area. So I don't know if that made any sense to you, but there we are. So 0 degree rotation if we don't preserve alignment, and if we preserve alignment, that's the rotation angles that each panel would need to be at. So let's make this a little more reasonable. So that's if you're going to do mosaics, so that's wonderful. We're just going to image this guy like right there, and we will come in. There we go. So now your other options here at this point is you can slew and center, or just slew, or slew, center, and rotate. And this is great if you want to make sure that everything is framed up the way that you want. You can, in my case, I slew, center, and rotate, and then I'll go to the imaging tab. I'll capture maybe a 20-second image so I can take a look at it and make sure that things are framed up the way that I think that I want them to be framed. It just helps you to visually just double check to make sure that everything that you're seeing here matches with what your sensor captures. And the other option that you have is, once you're happy with your framing, if you want to save this target, you can come down here and click on Add Target to Sequence. Now, if I had something loaded up in the sequencer, I could just add this to that sequence in the advanced sequencer, but I don't have anything in the advanced sequencer right now, so the only thing I can do is add target to target list. Now I have a whole bunch of different templates here that I can assign this thing to. So let's say that I wanted to do one-shot color, and I'm going to use the rotator, one-shot color, rotate. So if I click on that, it's telling me that I've already got a Veil Nebula, and it's okay. I'm going to go ahead and overwrite it. So you can see here that it's been created. If you're doing this brand new, or if you're rewriting like I am, it's been updated. So here's where the magic comes in. If I go into my sequencer, and then go to my advanced sequencer, and we'll go over this a lot of detail in the upcoming weeks, but I'm going over here to my targets, and I'm going to go to the Veil Nebula, which I have right there. Now, I have associated this target with a particular template. And what's nice here is all I need to do is drag this target into my sequence target area window, and it will load the target and the template that I had set up. And there you go. There's my advanced sequence, and there is my target right there. So that's the Sky Atlas. And it's a wonderful tool. It's a fantastic tool. It's an incredibly helpful tool. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the comments down below. I'll try to answer them the best that I can. I may have gotten something not quite 100% correct, and if so, you can correct me. That's perfectly fine. If you liked this video, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you like content like this and want to know when I publish more content like this, then go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell. And until next time, clear skies and happy guiding.